What's up, YouTube? My name's Connor McDonald, and my small business just closed over $100,000 in gross revenue in its first full year of business. I wanted to come on here and make this video so that I can help you make this much money in month 3 instead of month 7 of next year. At the time of filming this, Christmas just ended and the new year's about to begin. 2025 is coming up hot and heavy, and a lot of people are looking to start a business or start a side hustle or something like that. So I'm starting a new channel. I already have my old channel for my business for advertising purposes and stuff. I'm going to post this video there so that it gets more attention, but also I'm going to post it as a first video of my business channel. I'm going to start teaching different things that I'm learning in business, different advertising techniques, different networking techniques, stuff like that I'm learning that is either working or not working, let you know so that you can learn from my mistakes and you don't have to learn yourself. Now, whichever channel you're watching this from, I'm going to post a link in the description that's going to have a link to my opposite channel. That way, if you want to see more car-related videos, you can go there. Or if you're watching on In Your Driveway Auto and you want to see more business-related videos, you can switch over to here and follow this channel and start seeing more business content. This will probably be the longest video I've ever filmed, but I really wanted to come on here and tactically talk about from beginning to end what you need to do to start a business and to grow it and start that first couple of stages of scaling. So there's a lot of different videos out there on like mindset of beginning a business. There's a bunch of videos on how to grow a business, how to sustain a business. There's a bunch of like vague instructions and stuff, but I want to talk about like what I actually did in the first year to create this and make this happen. Since I'm a lot closer to that first beginning stages, all those problems and all of those headaches and frustrations are still pretty fresh on my mind. So it's going to be a little bit differently than if you're listening to somebody who's 20 years into their business. Some of those things are not very fresh on their mind. It doesn't really seem like a problem to them, so they don't think to talk about it in their videos. Well, that's why I want to come on here and talk a little bit more about stuff that I've learned recently and gone through recently. Very fresh on my mind. I might be able to relate it to you a little bit better in a way that you can actually use. All right, guys, so I'm not reading a teleprompter, but I did take a lot of notes for this video. I want to help you out as much as possible, pack as much info in here as possible. So I'm going to refer to my notes a little bit to kind of keep me on track and keep me moving, make sure I get everything in here. So the first step to running a business, of course, is actually having a business to run, obviously. So let's go ahead and get rid of all this. And let's talk about starting a business. I'm going to go ahead and do a disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a business lawyer. I'm not a state lawyer. I'm not a tax accountant. I'm not a CPA. I'm not a tax advisor. None of that stuff. But I do know what's worked for me and what has gotten me here. And I know that every state is different. Every county may be even different. And then also every industry is different as well. So you got a lot of different things to look at, but I'm going to go through the basic steps of what you need to do, and then so that you kind of know at least where to search. So everybody always starts off by saying, you know, you need to figure out what you want your business to do. Go ahead and figure out what you want to sell, what kind of service you want to do, yada, yada, yada. I'm going to go ahead and skip all that because I'm pretty sure that by the time you make it to this video, you've probably already figured out what you want your company to do. You just need to figure out how to make it do that thing, right? And be profitable. So let's just go ahead and skip all that. Let's get to actually creating a business. Now, the first thing that you got to do is you got to create an entity, okay? Now, there's a bunch of different entities you can create. You know, there's a LLC, corporation, all that kinds of stuff. For me, and what happens for most people, is an LLC works just fine, especially first starting out. That's a limited liability corporation is what it stands for. And what that gets you is a little bit of liability protection. You can do plenty of deep dives on all of these things. I just want to create a surface level thing of what you need. Also, this lets you get a tax identification number. Talk more about that in a minute. Lets you get stuff for wholesale account. So from your suppliers, sometimes you may need to get a wholesale account. It'll give it to you cheaper because you're going to be buying more. And then you can pass that cost of goods sold on to your customers. You could pass the savings on to them, or you can just use it to create more profit for yourself. Just kind of depends on how you're set up and how your industry is set up. But you're going to need a entity to get that wholesale account from your suppliers. It also adds some validity. What do I mean by that? Well, when you're talking to people, when you're first starting out, you're trying to convince them to give you money and trust you to do a good or a service to them. And when you're first starting out, a lot of times it's easy to think, oh, this is just some random dude trying to rip me off or whatever. If I go up and I say, oh, In Your Driveway Auto, it sounds cool because it's got a name. But if I say In Your Driveway Auto LLC, now it's, ooh, it's official. The state, oh, they gave you, gave you your name or whatever. It makes it sound more professional, more valid, make it sound less risky, I guess, for the customer to try. It just sounds good all the way. It sounds very professional. So on top of that, you're going to need, after you get your entity set up, whatever you choose to do, you need to get your tax identification number set up. Now, this is going to be called an EIN. EIN just stands for Employer Identification Number. Now, all it really is just a social security number for your business. So you can file taxes. Ugh. Gross. And it's going to be important for banking that we're about to get into. And then also, you're going to need this for wholesale accounts as well. All right. The next thing you're going to need is you're going to need to take care of your banking. And what do I mean by banking? Well, let's go ahead and get this written up here. You're going to need a bank account, of course, for money to go into and out of. So when people buy stuff from you, money goes into this account. When you buy supplies or anything like that, money comes out of the bank account. Okay, so that can be a checking account, a credit card account, whatever. I use a debit account. I use a debit card. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for that, but I've built this company completely debt-free to this point, and it's done pretty good. It's very stable and grows very strong so far. So that's worked for me. That's what I do. Anyway, moving on. Now you've got that account, you've got money coming in and money going out. You need a way to keep track of all that. And that is going to be your accounting software. Or I'm just going to put accounting, because you can hire an accountant if you want to. You can hire a CPA if you want to. It depends on where you're starting from. I was starting from basically scratch, like nothing, no extra cash to my name at all, or very little at least. So I just went with QuickBooks for this. I did an accounting software. I'm just going to put QBooks. QuickBooks, I like them a lot for their accounting. That's what they're made for. And it makes it very easy. Now, I know a lot of people hate on them, but if you got like 10 people or less, maybe even more, QuickBooks is going to work just fine. It's going to get you all the information you need. It's going to keep track of everything you need to keep track of for that small of an operation. Higher than that, you're going to need some more advanced software or a CPA. Probably be better just to hire a person. And then you're going to need a way for people to pay you, right? So you need a point of sales system. POS, point of sales. And for that, I use Square. Both QuickBooks and Square are very easy to set up, easy to go along with. And their interfaces are just really easy. They look professional. There's a lot of customization you can do to it. Square, I like it with their invoices. You can itemize things. You can create your own item for different labor prices, different parts prices, all that kind of stuff. Works out really good for somebody like us who just does a bunch of car repairs. Everybody wants to see, oh my God, why'd you charge me $300 just to do my brakes? Well, actually, Mrs. Jones, there was the brake pads and there was the labor. And then there was, your rotor was actually shot, so we had to replace your rotor too. It kind of has it all on there, so then they can see it and they can be like, oh, okay, makes sense. That all that stuff adds up. I forgot to talk about where I get my LLC and EIN, so let me backtrack a little bit. For the EIC LLC, I used LegalZoom. It's a pretty good company. They do a lot of good stuff. They don't charge you any extra to do the LLC. They just charge whatever your state charges. So for Alabama, where I'm at, I think it was like $200 to do it. They didn't charge any extra. They just charge the cost of doing it. Now, where they do make money is they charge you for your EIN if you get it set up through them, or if you set up anything else through them, they charge you for that, which is fair. They're providing a good service to somebody starting out. It's a good place to have everything all in one shot. And it's honestly, it's very convenient. But for the EIN, I just went to the IRS website. Make sure there's a bunch of fake websites out there called IRS like .com or IRS or EIN.com or something like that. Don't go to those. Go to the IRS.gov website. I'm pretty sure it's the IRS.gov is the name of the website. But make sure it's the real website and go there and you can set up your EIN. EIN is very easy. It's very stress-free, and you just follow the prompts, and it's free if you do it on there. They don't charge you. The IRS doesn't really charge you for that. They're going to make all their money right here. Oh, yeah, those sweet, sweet taxes. So they'll give it to you for free. That's what I did, but you do what you want to. And then next, after that, we have insurance. Now, insurance is really tricky. I'm not an insurance agent, so I hire somebody to take care of all this. I pay somebody else to take care of my insurance. Of course, everybody does. But every state's a little bit different in their requirements for your business. Every industry is a little bit different in their legal requirements. So it's important to know what you're legally required to have and what you should have, just kind of as a good idea. Not every industry and not every state requires you to have insurance, but it's always a good idea to have it. We're in a very litigious society. If you damage somebody's property or if somebody sues you just because they felt like they were in a bad mood one day, you want to have as much protection as you can, and insurance helps a lot with that. Have at least some general liability insurance. Then any additional insurance you might need. If you're going to have, say, a restaurant, there's probably going to be some additional insurances and stuff like that for it, for allergies and stuff. I don't know. I've never opened a restaurant, but I know it's going to be different for every industry. My industry was difficult being a mobile mechanic service. It's not a very common industry. It's not one they insure very often. So I had to call around, try to get some ideas, get different contacts for people, get in touch with people, fill out some forms and stuff like that. Finally found somebody who would cover me, but it was kind of a process to find somebody. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is business license. And I'm using that as a blanket term right now. There could be several different licenses that you need to have for your business. It just depends, once again, state, municipality, county, type of industry you're in, all that kind of stuff. So you may have to have just a general business license. You may have to have a garage license. You may have to have a resale license. You may have to, whatever. A lot of times you can go to the courthouse and they have like a binder that they can kind of look. You can tell them what you do. They can kind of look through it. Sometimes if you get a helpful clerk, they'll look through it and kind of give you some information, read and figure out which ones you need to have. You can also get on Google, do a lot. It's going to be a lot of reading to try to figure out what you do and don't need, and to try to make sure that you have all the right licenses. Or LegalZoom might have something set up for that. I'm not sure. I haven't looked, but they might have something set up to where you can find all your licenses that you need. And then the last place to look would be an actual business lawyer. You could talk to a local lawyer. They'll probably have all the information. If they don't have the information, they can get it for you very quickly. That's their businesses they're in. That's what they do for a living. So they're usually pretty decent at it. So now that you have your entity, and then you got your EIN, then you got your banking taken care of, you got your insurance and your licenses taken care of. Now you're ready to start actually making money, but you don't have any customers. All right, so let's move on to the next part. Let's talk about how to get some customers. All right, so next we're going to talk about customer acquisition. Okay, so there's a lot of different things you could cover with this, a lot of different ways I could go with it, but I want to cover really 5 main points. Okay, 5 main ways to get customers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. And once I get done with these, they're going to seem like no-brainers. Really, that's what you want to do. You want to keep it simple, stupid. Remember KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. The simpler it is, the less moving parts you have, the less that could go wrong. So, and there's a lot more that you could do after this. You can add on to it and everything. I'm a little bit past this right now, but this is really where you want to start getting customers from. This is going to be the easiest ways to get customers at the very beginning, okay? Especially if you're like me and you're running a service business, okay? So let's go ahead and get started. Now, once again, I run a mobile mechanic service business. The good thing about being a mobile mechanic is everybody has a car, everybody needs a mechanic. So I just went ahead and alerted all friends and family. I just said, hey, this is what I'm doing now. I'm starting a business. I said, if you ever need anything with your car, let me know. I'll get it taken care of. I've got all this experience, whatever. A lot of that was pretty easy because a lot of the people who encouraged me to start the business were friends and family. They already knew what was going on. They already knew the deal. But I could the ones that didn't know, I could kind of like work my way in. And that's just like the old saying, if you can't make money off your friends and family, who can you make money off of, right? So luckily I had a very good, very encouraging group of people around me, and they contributed a lot. So that's the first round. The first place I would go is to friends and family. After that, you need to find whatever enthusiasts look like in your particular field. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. For me, I'm in the automotive industry, right? So automotive enthusiasts, car enthusiasts, where do they go? They go to car shows a lot of times. And here in Birmingham, there's a local car show on every corner, almost every Saturday morning. They're all over the place. They do them. Sometimes they do them for charity. Sometimes they do them just for fun. Sometimes there's organizations, all kinds of stuff. But that's where people who really care about their cars and making sure their cars run well and making sure they have a good mechanic working on them, that's where those people are going to be. So that's where I went after friends and family. I started going to car shows, and I started trying to get in front of enthusiasts. Those are usually people who care a lot about what you're selling. They care enough to know quality when they see it. So if you got quality to sell to people who really care about it. When I started going there, I figured out what I would do is I would go and form relationships. Okay, I would go talk to people about their cars, and it's pretty natural to me. I've been going to car shows for almost all my life, so it's pretty easy to go talk to those people, talk to them about their custom builds, stuff like that, and strike up a conversation. And then be like, hey, well, I'm gonna let you get back to it, but if you ever need anything, here's my card or my flyer or whatever you have. Give me a call if you ever need anything. I'm doing this. I come to you and I fix your car. So give me a call if you ever need anything. And that worked really well. It wasn't very immediate. The biggest thing here is just getting your name out there and getting relationships formed. A lot of times those people work on their own stuff. They don't need a mechanic, but they know plenty of people who call them and say, hey, I know you work on cars a lot. Can you come fix my car? Well, they don't really like working on friends and family's car if they don't have to, or if they can get out of it. So they can be like, oh, I'm busy this weekend, but call this guy. He gave me his car last week. So that one, it took about 2 or 3 months to start seeing any turnaround coming back from those. Usually that's what I saw about 2 or 3 months after going to a car show and talking to people. That's when I started getting calls back. And I actually have the first car show I ever went to. I didn't even know it was happening. I just drove by the park and it was full of old cars. And so I just whipped a Yui, came back, went to the park, and I started talking to the people. And one of the ladies that I talked to, her and her boyfriend are some of my oldest customers I've had. They still, even this past month, they've been using me for a year and a half. This past month, I went out there and changed their oil, and I'm probably going to change a power steering pump for them. But anyway, you form really good customers out there. You form good relationships and everything, and these people tell other people about you, and then that just kind of spreads from there. So the third way to get customers is to create an online presence. Now, this is not my favorite part of marketing. Getting online, getting in front of the camera, creating content, all that kind of stuff for advertising, not my favorite thing to do. But I have to do it because it makes the business money. It makes me money. It makes my employees money, or my contractors money, rather. It's in this day and age, it's almost a necessity to have an online presence. Oh, also, a website is very helpful too. I have a website. People can go, they see a Facebook page or Instagram page and they don't have a website, they kind of get fishy. But if you have a link in there for your website, they go to your website. Oh man, this is official now, you know. Now, I got a couple of notes here that I want to read about the online presence that a lot of people don't think of. They're like, I'm not going to fool with Instagram. I'm not going to fool with Facebook. I'm not going to fool with YouTube, whatever it is. I'm not going to fool with all that. But I wrote down a couple of things I want you to think of. And one of the things that it does is if people can watch videos of you working, talking, teaching, it makes them feel like they are getting to know you, which helps them trust you enough to at least give you a chance. So they feel like through the screen, they get to know you, even though you don't get to know them. You have no idea who they are, but they're watching you. They're listening to you talk. They're watching your mannerisms. They're seeing, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. They start trusting you more. And then they'll message you, they'll call you. There's a couple of other ways that this will pay off. And one big thing that I heard somebody say when I first started was create how-to videos, short little snippet how-to videos. And one thing a lot of people get scared of is they get scared that they are going to make themselves obsolete to where the customer doesn't need them anymore. It's actually the opposite of what happens. Customers don't really want to do, a lot of times, they don't really want to do it themselves. They just want to know that you know how to do it. So they'll watch it if it's entertaining. They'll watch it. You know, sometimes it's kind of satisfying to watch. But really, they're just looking to see if you even know what you're talking about. And I'll give you an example of that. One time on my In Your Driveway Auto page, I released a video that was about doing a fuel pump on I think it was like a 2001 Silverado Chevy pickup. And instead of dropping the tank, I just lifted the truck bed off the frame and then I got to the fuel pump that way. Well, that's not really that special. Mechanics do that all the time. It's a pretty known trick, pretty widely known trick. But customers don't always know that. People who are not mechanics don't always know about these tricks. So if they see you doing that, they think, and rightfully so, you know, I'm not saying that this is wrong, but they see that you know what you're talking about. You know the tricks of the trade. You've been doing it for a while. I actually got like 2 or 3 customers off that one video because of that reason. That's what they told me, why they called me. So that's very important. Also, people just knowing that you're an actual business setup. Let's see if I don't want to miss anything on this one. I think that was my main points on the online presence. So let's move on. The fourth way I found to get customers is through networking events. Okay. Now this can look like a bunch of different things. It can be fundraisers. It can be business lunches. It can be, you know, neighborhood get together, whatever. There's a lot of different events out there for small businesses in your community to get together and talk about what you do, what they do, how you can help them grow, how they can help you grow, yada, yada, yada. I'm actually a member at a chapter of an organization called BNI. And basically, what we do is we meet once a week. I got invited by the lady who runs the promotional business that creates all of my uniforms, all my embroidery and everything. And I went in there to get some shirts made. She invited me to go. Rest is history. But I'm a member there. And what we do is once a week we meet and everybody gives like a 45-second little spiel on what their business is doing lately or what they've been working on lately or some encouragement or something or a specific ask of what they need to help their business grow. So an example of that, one guy that's really good at it, he owns some massage therapy locations. He owns 4 different locations with his business. They just opened up a 4th one. And earlier this year, I remember he asked, hey, I need to get to know gym owners in the area. So other gym owners, I need to get to know them so that I can reach out to the people that come there and work out and everything and try to help them recover faster. It's good for your clients. It's good for my clients, yada, yada, yada. And so that's the kind of stuff that we ask for. We just come together. Everybody encourages each other. Everybody uplifts each other. I've learned a lot from different people in the group. You also meet one-to-one outside of the group. You meet individually, so you get a bunch of advice and stuff like this. It's very, very helpful to get in these networking groups to talk to business owners that are ahead of you, and you can get advice locally and call them and say, hey, I'm dealing with this problem. How did you navigate this 4 years ago when you did it, or 10 years ago, or whatever? And they can give you some advice. So that's been very helpful. And the last thing is word of mouth. Now, I don't care what business you're in, word of mouth is going to be the best form of advertisement, hands down. That's it. The trust is already established with word of mouth because the person, a lot of times it's them talking to their friends or them talking to their family, and they will tell the prospect, hey, I trust this company. I've used them before. I know them, whatever. And the trust is already built. The sale is all but done by the time they give you a call. Now, what all four of these, I saved that for last because all four of these all can be used with word of mouth. So, friends and family, at first they're going to give you a chance. They're going to use you because he's my friend or he's like my cousin or whatever. So, it's probably going to mess my car up, but that's what family does. We just help each other out. Then that you do it, you actually fix your car, you actually do it right. Then they're like, oh, okay, he knows what he's talking about. Then they start telling their friends to come to you. They start telling other family members to come to you. They start telling their work friends to come to you. All kinds of stuff. Enthusiasts, these guys, if you have a friend who's a hot rodder and has built his own custom cars before, and you ask him, hey, who would you go to get a service done by? And that guy tells you, hey, go to In Your Driveway Auto, you're probably going to listen to him because he knows what he's talking about. You've seen him. He does all his own work and everything. So if he recommends somebody else, he's got to trust them. That's a good word of mouth source. Online presence is really good. I'll give you another example of online presence with word of mouth. I've had several people call me as customers and I ask them, hey, how'd you hear about me? How'd you hear about us? And they say, well, a friend of mine follows you on Instagram, or a friend of mine follows you on Facebook, or a friend of mine follows you on YouTube. And I was having car trouble. My normal mechanic is backed up a couple of weeks, and they said to give you a call. That's happened several times. That online presence turns into word of mouth. People who haven't even used us before are referring other people word of mouth, right? With networking, people get to know you. They get to know what you're about. They get to know what kind of character you have. And once they start trusting you, even if they haven't used you, again, they're going to give you that word of mouth. They're going to refer you to their business partners. They're going to refer you to their customers. They're going to refer you to their friends and family. So really what all five of these have in common is relationships. What I mean by relationships is that if you don't have a good relationship with your friends and family, they're probably not going to give you that first step of like trusting you and trying to help you out. That's kind of self-explanatory. If you have a good relationship with enthusiasts, and I mean, those guys know what they're talking about when they talk about quality work and everything. They build all their own cars. They do whatever it is that you do, and they do it for fun. So if those guys do it for fun and they recommend somebody who does it for a living, they probably know what they're talking about. People are going to trust them really well. But you have to have a good relationship with them. You have to build that relationship with them and actually be trustworthy. The online presence, I've already talked about it before. They feel like they are creating a relationship with you, even though you don't know who they are. They can see you through the phone and watch you interact. They create a relationship with you. Networking, you create a relationship with other people in the area. BNI tracks all their numbers for thank you for closed business, revenue coming in, revenue going out, all that kind of stuff. Over 10% of our revenue this year can be attributed to this networking right here. That the relationships I've formed through that networking organization contributes to over 10% of our revenue this year. And then word of mouth. Obviously, if you don't have a good relationship with them, they're not going to tell other people about you. So make sure you get those good relationships. Make sure you're nurturing those relationships, and make sure you're actually being trustworthy when you are engaging with these people. So now I want to talk about hiring help. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. I could make a whole video on this, probably a whole series on hiring people. Um, I hired my first two guys this past summer, one in month 7 and one in month 6. So both in quarter 3. And who I hired for what position was not who I initially thought I was going to. Thought I was going to hire an accountant first because I don't like doing the accounting. I don't like numbers really that much. But I had to take a step back and figure out what was the best position for me to hire for. How was I going to hire? Who was I going to? All this kind of stuff. So I'm going to go with when. When do you hire? How do you know when it's time to hire? For me, it's whenever I get so overloaded with work that I cannot continue to grow the business without somebody else helping. So, over capacity. Now, I got this way before I made my first hire, and I hired basically an office assistant. It's a position called service advisor. If you're not familiar with the automotive world, what they do really is they create estimates, create invoices, they order parts, get them there, all that kind of stuff. They source parts, all that kind of stuff. So they do a lot, honestly, a lot of backside work. And that was taking over 40, probably about 40% of my time at first. So I could not do more advertising because I was spending so much time doing this. I couldn't do more of the deliverable, which is fixing cars to make money, because I was spending too much time doing this. Also, I couldn't get any more customers because I was spending all my time fixing cars and advertising. I couldn't do any more of the backside work. So I was over capacity. The thing that I could hire out quickest was that service advisor job. That kind of moves us into the what. Now, like I said, I thought that I wanted to hire an accountant first, but I had to do some reflecting, do some work, and kind of start thinking about it strategically and figure out what is something that you can hire out to somebody and teach them to do rapidly that is going to take the most time off of your plate for the least amount of money that you can give. Basically, what's the most bang for your buck as far as time that you can buy back? That's really what you're doing when you're hiring help. You're buying yourself time. And that time is either to spend with your family or spend doing something else in the business or whatever you want to do. You're buying back time. So how can I buy back the most amount of time get the most bang for my buck? So I'm going to go ahead and put most time per dollar. So the most amount of time you can get back per dollar. And it can be something that you don't like doing. It can be something that you dread doing. It can be something that takes a lot of resources, a lot of energy away from you instead of time. It can be something that takes a lot of energy away from you and drains away from the rest of the business. Okay, so that's who I hired first. Now, I did go ahead and make a SOP book before I hired that person. That way, by the way, it ended up being my brother. I had worked with him before, and he and I worked very well together. Back in the day, this is back when we were teenagers, we ran like a landscaping company, I guess you could call it. It's basically just cutting grass, weed eating, all that kind of stuff, blowing leaves. And I was the one who ran the books back then, and he was the one who did a bunch of the grunt work. I called the customers, got everything set up, and now it's kind of flipped. He's better with software than I am. He's better with computers. He's better with sitting inside. I got to go out and talk to people and everything. But he's also very good customer facing. He's very good, so I can put him in networking events and stuff like that, and I know he's going to do good. With my technician, I hired him to take care of vehicle repairs so I could focus on more backside stuff like building relationships, getting more business, networking, advertising, that sort of thing. He bought back time for me to get more business. That both of them did. They both did in different ways. So that's what I did. I needed somebody to take care of the office stuff. Second, I needed somebody to take care of actually fixing cars. So also with the technician, it's another good example of why relationships are so important, because the guy that I hired ended up being really good. He had about 10 years experience more than me. Great guy. I'll talk a little bit more about everything that made him a good fit and everything. But I knew him because he worked at one of my suppliers for parts and everything, and I had known him for almost a year at this point. I'd seen him work. I had seen the advice he gave to customers for fixing their cars. I had seen how he interacts with customers. I had seen how he led people and all this kind of stuff. So I kind of like had known how he worked before we started working together. I still did an interview and everything to make sure that everybody was on the same page and it was all good. But I had kind of already seen a lot of him that I needed to see before he even started working for me. So who are you going to hire for these positions? Whatever position it is that you need, who are you going to hire? Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the first thing you need to do is you need to create an avatar for who you need in that position. Now, I'm not talking about an airbender, and I'm not talking about the little blue guys that ride around on birds or whatever it is that they do in those movies. I'm talking about the ideal characteristics of a person to be in this position to take over these responsibilities and further your company. So for my office guy, I created like a SOP binder, had all basically broke down what I wanted him to do. It was very clearly defined what his roles were. It's very clearly defined what I expect of him, what he can expect of me, yada, yada, yada. I didn't create a binder yet for the technician. It was fairly straightforward. I'll set you up with a customer. You go out there, take care of the repair. Let me know when it's done. Let me know if you have any problems. Boom. I am going to create a binder at some point for SOPs and everything for them, which is just standard operating procedures. But I haven't done that yet. But for him, for the technician, my avatar needed to be very good customer facing, needed to be good with actually fixing cars, good with diagnosing cars, needed to know all this kind of stuff. I even part of it was needed to be part-time because I couldn't take the responsibility really of having a full-time person yet because we didn't have all the business yet. So I wanted him to be part-time, wanted my brother to be part-time. Ended up finding perfect guys to fit both positions. They're part-timers. They work. My brother works after his main job every night. Another guy works once a week on his off day. So next we need to talk about how. And what I mean by how is there's a couple of different ways you can hire them / pay them and structure all that for taxes and stuff like that. So you need to figure out whether you want to do W-2 or 1099 contractor. So W-2, it's just tax forms is what that is. That people just refer to them as different types of like employees or workers. But W-2 isn't a traditional employee. You got to provide certain levels of insurance for them, certain levels of full-time hours, certain levels of all this kind of stuff. You got a bunch of stuff that goes into W-2, and it becomes very helpful when you're running a larger organization. But for me, and for, you're going to have to look into all these and do a little bit of reading, but these are your different options. For me, 1099 makes sense right now because these guys are subcontractors. They're using their own vehicles, supplying a bunch of their own tools and all that kind of stuff. So they need the tax breaks and they need freedom to kind of take care of the jobs that I give them when they get the opportunity to at their best convenience and everything. So 1099 made sense for me, but you got to figure out how you want to pay your people. Okay, so if you got any more questions on hiring people, please let me know in the comments because I can do a whole series on this. Like I said, I've done it twice this year, so not the most experienced person, but I spent a lot of time reading, asking for advice, praying about it, praying for wisdom on it, and just really, I did a lot, probably way more research than I should have for just a couple of part-time hires, but I can kind of spread that information out if y'all need anything. Over capacity, I wanted to use some examples. So when I hired my office guy, I figured, I'm going to pay him a percentage based on how much comes in. He gets paid on commission. So in order to offset that, I'm going to charge an additional, you could see on my payment chart, I'm going to show you in a minute. I was not making that much money at the time when I hired him. So I was like, to justify paying him, I'm going to charge, I think it was almost 10%. It's like 9% or something like that. Not quite 10%. But I increased my labor cost to offset his payment. That way, even if I didn't get any more business, at least I was still making the same amount. And he was making money, and the customer was, getting work done faster. It was beneficial to everybody. But what I noticed when I increased my rate was that my closing rate increased also. So I got over capacity. I hired him. That took about 40% of my time, freed it up. I started spending that time marketing. I started spending that time working on cars, all this kind of stuff. It wasn't even a month later before I got over capacity again. And I was in there talking to my guy that get car parts. And I was like, man, I'm so tired right now. I haven't slept in like 2 or 3 days. Like I'm exhausted. And he was like, dude, yeah, you don't look too good right now. I was like, I need another mechanic. Do you know anybody who wants to work part time? And he raised his hand. And I was like, boom, let's set up an interview this weekend and let's try to get you started soon. So those were both times I waited until I was so far over capacity I couldn't hardly function anymore. There's no wiggle room in my day to get more customers to grow the business. And that's when I knew I had enough business to sustain somebody else. I could take 2 or 3 steps back, let a couple more people take 2 or 3 steps forward to take up the slack, and then I can focus on other things to grow the business. All right, so this is the board. It's the same setup that was at the beginning of the video at the intro that probably caught your attention. I'm filming this before I get into everything else, so I'm kind of filming out of order right now. But I'm going to go ahead. I want to talk about events that happened that led to different price points on here, different revenue streams for each month. So, January, February, March, honestly, not that bad for having still be kind of in the beginning stages, not really knowing what I'm doing, still kind of, getting into advertising. But then you'll notice it drops down in April, May, and June. That's when I joined BNI was in March at the end of the first quarter, and still it dropped off in quarter two. Quarter two was pretty rough this year. I know a lot of people who own businesses or are pretty high up in businesses. It was rough on a lot of people, but I'll tell you what I think contributed to these 3 months being bad, and that is I got overloaded or overwhelmed or whatever you want to call it in the first quarter, and I had all the business I can handle, almost too much business. I was about to have to start turning people away. So I really slacked off of advertising. I slacked off of my videos online. I slacked off of going to car shows. I wasn't really talking to people or putting myself out there as much. I was just grinding away, fixing as many cars as possible, making as much money as possible. I didn't want to advertise anymore because I couldn't take anymore. So, what was the point of advertising? Well, what happened was I got through everybody that was waiting on me. And then at the end of everybody who was already booked up and already waiting, didn't have anybody after that. So there was no new calls coming in, not really any new leads coming in. Um, and so I really doubled down in my video production and my content production. Also, I started going to car shows again, started talking to people again. And as you can see, it takes a couple of months for those things to kind of come in and to start getting attention again. But here in July, I got to the point where I was like, I am tired. I'm not really tired, but well, I was tired in general. So I couldn't keep up anymore with doing all the estimates and doing deliverable and doing the marketing and everything. So I was either suffering in marketing or I was suffering in contacting my customers on time or I was suffering in actually doing the work. They all work together and they all create revenue. If you're not doing one, the other falls apart. You have no revenue. So, in order to fix that, I hired an office assistant, um, that service advisor I was talking about, and he freed up probably about 40% of my time. So now I could do a lot more marketing, could do a lot more of the actual deliverable, and revenue just went up. You can see right here, it almost doubled in that month. The other thing that I did in July when I made my office hire was in order to justify hiring somebody, I raised my labor price a little bit, almost 10%, not quite 10%. I went up a little bit. I'm still way undercutting most of the competition in this area. Um, and what I noticed was my closing rate increased. It almost doubled. So not only was I charging more now, but more people were saying yes to the stuff that I was quoting them. This is a weird phenomenon that happens a lot. A lot of people don't really trust that it's going to happen the first couple times they raise prices. They just think that they're going to run all their customers off. But it turns out that the customers that you want, it actually makes you more, a lot of times it'll make you more appetizing because you're not the cheapest guy on the block. People are used to getting what they pay for. If you're the cheapest guy out there, they're going to think, well, I mean, there's probably a reason why you're so cheap. What's wrong with you that you're not charging all that much? So closing rate increased. I had more time to actually capitalize on the closing. Go into the next month, I was beat again. So tired, I needed somebody else. Just like I talked about, hired that guy, and that was the best month that we've had all year. The best month we've had to date with the business and everything. We really just carried that momentum right into August. September, I had to step away for a week or two. We had some traveling to do, had some weddings to go to, stuff like that. We had weddings all throughout the year that I had to step away from. That's why I kind of cut some of the revenue out. If you're gone for a week out of a month, that's a quarter of that's 25% of the working hours that you can't bill anymore because you're just not in town if you're the only guy working. Now, the reason it didn't dip so hard anymore was because my field hire, my technician, was able to do work when I was not here. So I could set everything up for him, still talk to the customers, still get estimates made and everything. And he could go out and actually work on cars once a week while I'm not here. So it didn't take that big of a hit. October, we had some traveling to do. November, what happened was there was a dead week at the beginning of November. I don't know if y'all remember, there was an election this year, and it was a pretty big one. Everybody was really stressed about it. A lot of people didn't really go out very much for the first week, didn't really call. I didn't get a lot of traffic for the first week. So that happened. And then also, my wife and I had an anniversary on the third week of the month, took the whole week off for an anniversary trip to celebrate. And so we were down 2 weeks, basically 2 weeks we weren't working, and we still brought in almost 10 grand that month. Then in December, we had 2 record-breaking weeks. Obviously, we're not done with December yet, still got a few days to go. This is what we have so far. But we had to take a lot of time off for Christmas, take a lot of time off for the New Year's, all that kind of stuff. If we didn't have all the time off and everything, we probably could have hit about 16 or 17 this month. But really, really good months to end it off with. Sometimes it helps to be able to look at the events and see, did they actually make a difference on the revenue? And the answer is, yeah, you can definitely tell a big difference on the revenue, what it brought in. And of course, that translates if you're averaging about 30% profit a month, which is what we average this year, the more revenue you bring in, the more that you make every month. So pretty important stuff. All right, so go ahead and like and subscribe if you found any of this helpful or even just entertaining. Looking forward, some of our plans for 2025 moving on is we have changed our LLC to a corporation. So it'll start operating as a corporation now instead of an LLC. This is going to give us a little bit more liability protection, a little bit more control over, taxes and stuff like that. I think it's going to be a good move. I'm excited to see how that plays out next year. We have something called the IVSP that we're rolling out. This individual vehicle service plan. Basically, it's a year-long plan or subscription or whatever you want to call it. It includes oil changes, inspections, discounts, priority scheduling, all kinds of stuff. A lot of benefits to the customer. It's going to help them save time, effort, and money. It's also going to help us with customer retention and get that customer lifetime value up. Another thing that we're really excited about is a tire change service. So we're working on acquiring another vehicle and some tire change equipment, tire balancing equipment, so that we can start adding that to our repertoire. Right now, we don't do any of that because it takes a bunch of equipment and everything that we don't have, takes a whole nother vehicle or trailer or whatever. So we're working on acquiring that. Hopefully we'll have that up and running by February. We'll be able to take care of people's tires, tire pressure sensors, rebalancing, that kind of stuff. And what that's going to allow me to do is I'm going to be able to hire another person, probably a younger guy with a little bit less experience. Tire changing is not a super technical job. It's pretty easy to teach to somebody. So I can hire them a little bit cheaper and have my, labor rates is a little bit lower for that kind of work. So still have my profit margins right there, right at about 30%. So very excited about that. We're hoping, our goal is to get to 250,000 in overall revenue for next year. So we'll see how that goes. Stay tuned, and I'll try to update y'all at least quarterly, hopefully monthly, on how this stuff is going. And then I'm going to throw in a bunch of, extra videos, extra how-tos or tutorials. We're talking about business. If you want to see something that's a little more philosophical, a little bit more of like why I started the business, or a little bit more of why I see a lot of people starting businesses, or if you want to see something like that, or like what your mindset's got to be to start a business or to continue running a business, or the growth that you got to go through. If you want to see any of that stuff, or if you want to see something completely different, please leave me a comment. Or if you just really didn't like this video, go ahead and leave me a comment that way too. It boosts up my engagement on YouTube, helps algorithm and everything. So yeah, go ahead, like, subscribe, share, and leave me a comment. So thanks, guys. Stay tuned.